space. Big mix-up.
Only him. Only him.
That's ridiculous.
How's your
Hello and welcome to Hunting for Headlines with your host, Jalen Rose, along with Nima Topgay. Today we're going to be talking about the new hiring of Thomas Tuchel as their new manager at Chelsea FC in the English Premier League, and the recent ruthless dismissal of Frank Lampard along with it, who was sacked just 24 hours before Luton Town in the FA Cup in the fourth round, but more details to come, along with Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Romelu Lukaku's argument on the pitch, or a little frontal, and how that will affect their games in the future. Also, we're going to also be covering Raul Jimenez, a striker for Wolverhampton Wanderers in the English Premier League, and how his head injury has been impacting his recovery as of late, and what will the future look for him, along with other news and other details coming up shortly on Hunting for Headlines. Today we'll start off with Chelsea's newly appointed manager, Thomas Tuchel, as he replaces Frank Lampard in his ruthless dismissal from Stamford Bridge. Frank Lampard, one of the legendary marquee players in his playing days at Chelsea, scoring goals and assists and firing on all cylinders while he was there at his tenured. But as of late, with his managerial career at Derby County and Chelsea, it just doesn't seem to reminisce the same as his playing career. Frank Lampard, assigned manager at Chelsea back in July of 2019, has not lived up to expectations as of late, as he went there, starting with his first season, was okay. But then in his second season, signing an enormous amount of different players like Tino Werner, Kai Havertz, Eduardo Mendy, Hakim Ziyech, Ben Chilwell, many other players. A big reason why his success didn't translate to the season as today was because of all the new faces and just really not having all the players gel. But this comes as no surprise, as you know the new manager in the managerial world does not have all the experience to make sure that he builds a championship-winning team, especially with players he just recently brought in, making sure they gel together and also fitting them into a system with players who were there before. And just making sure everything's in fruition week by week. But Thomas Tuchel, the new appointed manager at Chelsea, previously was managing Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, a top team in Europe, along with PSG or Paris Saint-Germain, who was in the Champions League final against Bayern Munich, who we talked about last week. Obviously, Bayern Munich went ahead to win that game in the UEFA Champions League final. But Thomas Tuchel, a big reason why they went as far as they did, and he also was a part of PSG not too long ago at the end of last year, but of course was sacked. A big thing with these big clubs, there's a lot of expectations on the manager. If you do not live up to them, you will get fired as quickly as you got hired. So, or as they say, sacked. As they said here in my sources below, it said Frank Lampard was only sacked less than 24 hours after watching his side beat Luton Town in the FA Cup fourth round. Now, I know it is the FA Cup and everything is domestic opposed to continental, but Luton Town and success is not going to add up to what has happened or transpired at Chelsea. And just the biggest things was just the $220 million was signed to sign all these players, and not everything has coped and gelled and reminiscence into, into an identity and finding those things to transpire and transition to relate to success consistently for Chelsea, who have won 3 Premier League titles in the past 10 years, with managerials in the past like Jose Mourinho and Roberto Di Matteo and Kevin De Bois and all these other players, or should I say managers. So, Frank Lampard is just one that other player. He might be a Chelsea legend, but as a manager, I would not say the same thing. Here's what Thomas Tuchel, though, had to say in his new Chelsea managerial spot on Chelsea FC's YouTube channel before his game at Wolverhampton.
First of all, it's one of the biggest clubs in Premier League. It's one of the biggest clubs in Europe and in the world. It's the Premier League. To challenge, to compete with this club in Premier League is a huge challenge for me. And I'm like my players. I am a competitor. I want to have these competitions. I like it. I want to see. I want to compete on the highest level, also with against the biggest coaches in the world. Then we find a mix in the team that is amazing, because we have a mix of experienced and big personalities with a mix of very young and very, very talented players. So to bring this together and to make it a unit and to play like this and to guide them and to help them is what we love, and it starts, and it starts really fast, but it feels absolutely great. We can never forget that it takes some time to be part of one of the most demanding teams in the world, and of course we play for titles and we play for results. So if you want to make it here, is maybe one of the biggest and toughest challenges also for the youngsters. But we will never stop to push them. We will guide them. We will help them, and we have a lot of young players, especially up front. A lot of young players, also from Germany and from foreign countries, and not only from the academy. And that excites us because it's always nice to guide them, to help them, to teach them, and to follow their development. And you can play. For me, it's like a feeling you get when you have hungry players that have to earn their results, that have to earn their titles here, and didn't do it in the other clubs, but they want to do it here. It sets for me the basic for a spirit, for a certain spirit, and for a certain style. That means we want to show a certain intensity and a certain hunger to make our supporters also proud of us.
Heading back on this topic with Frank Lampard's dismissal and Thomas Tuchel's new managerial position at Chelsea, as you just heard him talking about his new experience and the objectives and his job, what it's going to look like with his team, helping his Chelsea side get back into the top tier things after they are at one point were first in the Premier League, but after recent inconsistent matches in play just before the winter break and Christmas, they dropped down to a league table low 9th, and just pushing up the table to be 8th, but as opposed to Chelsea's expectations as being a part of the top 6 in the Premier League and one of the biggest teams in Europe, that is obviously not good enough. So Thomas Tuchel has a lot of work to do, a lot of things to fix and to manage and to also put things together, but hey, that's what the best of the best managers does, and Thomas Tuchel does have the resume for taking the top teams and making them not only relevant but making them winning sides again. We'll see what he does as the months go on. Also talking about this is also pretty similar to Mauricio Pochettino, another manager that was also recently appointed by PSG, a side that Thomas Tuchel used to manage, for he also got sacked late November of last year. Mauricio Pochettino then replaced him after being the longtime Tottenham Hotspur's manager in the English Premier League, another top 6 team, along with Mauricio Pochettino's managerial career at Spurs. Consistency and success all the way through, but they didn't get to where they wanted because, that came along with the players and the signings, and also Spurs, spent over $1 billion on a stadium. Rather than most pundits saying that, hey, why didn't you bring in more talent? Why didn't you bring in the players? And the biggest thing was they were spending more things on exterior sources, such as revenue, advertising and stuff, rather than, I guess you could say, the average fan saying improving the squad. So that was a big thing that a lot of players and spectators had with Spurs, and that's why they were a good team, but they didn't get over the hump of winning the Premier League anytime soon, or winning those big matches, or winning those big tournaments, or getting those trophies that I guess most people would expect for them, especially with the players like Harry Kane, the top striker they have, Heung-min Son, Dele Alli, Bergwijn, and the list goes on, with that. And we're going to be finishing off Tottenham Hotspur's striker Harry Kane, who I just alluded to or talked about earlier. He says he might make his return to play against West Ham, the team Jesse Lingard, just went on loan to after 3 weeks of suffering ankle injuries against Liverpool. Now one of the biggest things for Harry Kane, he's a great player and everything, but he does suffer a lot from injuries, and as much as he is on the pitches, it kind of does accumulate to how much he isn't on the pitch. Having a long injury history, a long tenure with that. He does have a hard time sometimes with his durability, and suffered a big time injury last year, and it was out for 5-6 months, and the same thing kind of goes with this season but now with both ankles. So he has a possibility of returning against West Ham this weekend after being out for 3 weeks. It is not certain, but it's always some hope with Tottenham fans as to see their star player play. He is awaiting scans to determine the extent of the problems. If there's bone or ligament damage, he could be out for at least 6 weeks. So it just depends on how bad it is. If he can play through it, I guess obviously they're not going to want him to do that, but they need to see if there's further damage to it. Obviously, he had a big-time injury last year, and obviously you don't want to be rushing stuff like this, especially with the star players and how much they impact the squad. Obviously, Spurs boss Mourinho's keeping his fingers crossed as the injuries as he's hoping the injuries are not as serious, and obviously Kane hopes that he only be out for 2 to 3 weeks. if it does extend or get any longer. But the nice thing is, bringing in Gareth Bale to the side from Real Madrid, who struggles since a summer return from Madrid. He can help, improve the impact or lessen the impact of Kane's injury and bring them a little, bring them a different spark or bring them something they haven't seen for him, since he's joined the Spurs in the summer. Well, that is all for today on Hunting for Headlines, bringing you the latest news, the latest debates, the latest topics, and all the stuff and all the angles, and just describing the news in a shorter but faster way. This is Jalen Rose and Nima Topgay today on Hunting for Headlines. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Hunting for Headlines.